It is the 41st millennium. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the gods, and master of 1,000,000 worlds by the might of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is the carrion lord of the Imperium, for whom 1,000 souls are sacrificed every day, so that he may never truly die. Yet even in his deathless state, the Emperor continues his eternal vigilance. Mighty battle fleets cross the demon-infested miasma of the warp, the only route between distant stars, their way lit by the Astronomicon, the psychic manifestation of the Emperor's will. Vast armies give battle in his name on uncounted worlds. Greatest among his soldiers are the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, bio-engineered super warriors. Their comrades in arms are Legion, the Astra Militarum and countless planetary defense forces, the ever-vigilant Inquisition, the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, to name only a few. But for all their multitudes, they are barely enough to hold off the ever-present threat from aliens, heretics, mutants, and worse. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. These are the tales of those times. Forget the power of technology and science, for so much has been forgotten, never to be relearned. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, for in the grim, dark future, there is only war. There is no peace amongst the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, and the laughter of thirsting gods. Oh, hello everybody. Sorry, I got carried away, I guess. My name is Man Alone, and this is my YouTube channel. And thank you for indulging me in that sort of different than usual introduction. But it's one of my favorite things about one of my favorite universes, which is Warhammer 40k or Warhammer 40,000. And I want to talk about a topic that was not only mentioned in that video, but in fact I highlighted it using the highlighter on the computer, and that is the Grimdark. Grimdark is a word that it does a lot of legwork, the word itself, in conveying what exactly it is. It's actually a term that was originated from Warhammer over 30 years ago. And it is a description of not only the situation in the 41st millennium, but the entire milieu of the galaxy, the tone of the lore of Warhammer 40,000. It is a full lean in toward nihilism, desperation, hopelessness, helplessness. The situation is bad. It's getting worse. The good guys don't win. The good guys don't even exist. You cannot be a good guy in a universe this horrible. Everything is unimaginably devastating, tragic, bloody, violent, miserable, and irredeemable. And I love it. In fact, when I said one of my favorite properties, I say this with a heavy heart, but I think it is my favorite sci-fi property. And the reason my heart is heavy is because my first true love, and in a lot of ways, my spirit connection to a universe is always going to be Dune. I found 40K via Dune, but if we're talking just facts and figures here, I don't spend 97 hours a week watching lore videos on Dune. I watch it on Warhammer 40,000. And my interest in that setting started out with just lore. I would listen to videos, read books, and then, like the experience of most people, I said, hey, maybe I'll try out the video games, which are the widest range of quality of any video game property ever. They're either amazing or the worst game you've ever played. Then I started dabbling in painting the models, and then suddenly I'm playing a few tabletop games and learning strategies, and now I'm trying to build a 1,000-point army. That's okay if you have no idea what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about something that is so large, it's a universe that's so big that it's been a few years now that I've loved Warhammer 40,000, and on a weekly, and some weeks on a daily basis, I find things in wikis, videos, books, etc. that I've never heard about before. And that's how expansive it is. And so it could be quite intimidating for people to enter it. But it is one of the things I'm most thankful that I did, that I happed upon it, and it hooked me in a certain way, because I had encountered it a couple of different times. To be honest, like a lot of times, I'm sure this is the same as you, I confused it with Warcraft, and I just didn't know what it was. And I would hear things about it. People would say, oh, you know, Warhammer, boy, if you want to go bankrupt, that's a good idea of a hobby, because these models, you know, this is just one example right here. I actually got this one as a free yearly gift for subscribing to Warhammer Plus. But this model right here, if you were to just buy this in the US, it'd probably be $40. And this is just one guy. And like an army might be 15 of these, and 2 vehicles, and 1 lieutenant, and 1 big robot guy. And so it is quite expensive, but that's for people who play tabletop, build the models, and paint. Some people just like to read the books. Some people just like to listen to podcasts about it. Some people just like the video games. I'm not trying to sell you Warhammer 40,000. It's a big undertaking. I look lovingly in my girlfriend's eyes as I talk to her about this universe, and she is just, I could see the gears turning so hard in her head as she's trying to meet me where I'm at, you know. And I'm telling her about how the slow process of Belisarius Call getting a Necron Canatep warlord to, you know, trust him enough to share some secrets about time dilation, and how that to me shows the difficulty of, you know, establishing friendships in adulthood. I really see her trying to understand, but it's impossible. You can't in a certain way. And it is also absurd. It's patently absurd. But there are a lot of things that are enjoyed that are patently absurd. Role-playing games is one of those, right? That's a thing that when you describe it to a lot of people, they're like, huh? Why don't you just play a video game? Why do you do that at all? And we don't have to have an answer for that, because the answer is sometimes it's that you don't have to have an answer, and that's what makes it special, right? I wanted to lead off with Warhammer, though, because it is, you know, the originator of Grimdark. It is the originator of at least the use of that word, but there are so many other properties that participate in the sort of platonic form of Grimdark. There's an absurdism to it. It's kind of like when I used to watch like wrestling, like on TV. Like I knew it was fake. I knew it was ridiculous. I knew that like somehow Hulk Hogan doing like a leg drop, but like moving his arms around before then, meaning it was like a super leg drop, didn't inflict any more damage than any other leg drop. I knew that stuff. And I know that with 40K. You know, this person's name is World Eater's Terminator, Azrak the Annihilator. You know, that's a very grimdark name, and the armor is very grimdark. There's so many unnecessary parts here. Instead of Azrak the Annihilator, why can't his name be Kenneth? Well, Kenneth isn't going to do well in the grimdark future, right? And it puts me in a place when I'm learning about it, when I'm thinking about it, that I find extremely powerful sometimes. I find it extremely satisfying, unsettling. I find that it produces a feeling in me that I like to feel, okay? And I encountered another game that I'm going to talk a little bit about that's a tabletop RPG, which is going to be a little closer to home for many of you, that started me thinking about wanting to try to structure my thoughts a little bit to convey why I like grimdark settings. And I also have had this thing that I've wanted to talk about a while, but I know that it will grind some people's gears because it's just, it comes down to preference, right? Like so many things in tabletop role-playing come down to, what do you like? What kind of things do you like? What are things that excite you when you see it on the shelf? You know, there's no accounting for taste. It's like trying to convince somebody that a tomato tastes good. You can give every fact about that tomato, but if the person doesn't like how it tastes, they don't like how it tastes. And so I've just been trying to find a way, for instance, to say something like, I don't like tabletop role-playing games that take out all the main characters and make them into cats. But I also don't mind Mouse Ritter, but maybe I mind something called like Call of Cthulhu. I actually think that's an actual RPG, so I'm not putting that one on blast specifically. It's just what I thought of. But I don't feel attracted to those kind of settings. It's part of the reason I don't like 5e. I feel that it has become silly, preposterous, whimsical, slapstick, and that's my impression, and that's my taste. And I'm sure there are plenty of games being played at plenty of tables that are not that way. But in general, I think all I need to do is point to the recent D&D movie to say, like, would you call that movie grimdark? Would you say that at any time you felt that the characters were despairing because all hope was lost and there was no way out? No, it was funny. It was good. Like, it was a good movie. It was funny. It's just, I don't prefer that type of universe. And I think there are a lot of reasons bandied about why a person might like a grimdark universe, and I think a lot of them are wrong. I think the reasons are like, oh, it's maybe comes from a place of like insecure masculinity, or a person who's over serious, or a person who like has too high of expectations of gameplay, that they have to have everything be very dour and dramatic and everything. And I think those are completely correct for somebody who has never actually immersed themselves in a grimdark setting. Okay. And so I don't think we're going to be able to say exactly what it is, but it's more of something that you develop by example. And, you know, encountering it over and over again in Warhammer, you start to get a very good sense of it. I have it in my head right now in a very synesthetic way. Like, I see it as shapes and colors and feelings, and it's hard to convey, right? It's like conveying a wave pattern or something. And so I think I've done my best that I can do, because if I was to try and explain Warhammer to you more than that intro that I gave, this video would be 783 hours long. But suffice to say, it's around the year 40,000. They don't know for sure, because they can't even really track time that well anymore, because the Imperium of Mankind is such a bloated bureaucracy. It is threatened on all sides by tyrannid aliens, by chaos demons, by traitor soldiers that used to be part of it. And powering all of this is this hugely powerful psyker named the Emperor, who his son basically biffed him with a power claw so hard 10,000 years ago that he's like right on the edge of death, and he sits on this golden throne, and they have to sacrifice 1,000 psychers a day to keep him alive and keep him firing this Astronomicon, which is a light that everyone on the human side in the galaxy uses to direct their ships to and from. It's basically like their North Star, because to travel faster than light in Warhammer, I guess it's not FTL, but like to travel, you know, like fold space time or whatever, you have to go into the warp, and the warp is hell. And I'm not saying it's like really dangerous. It's almost like it's hell. There are demons there. If you don't have something called a Geller field, they seep into your ship and make you go mad and maybe make you want to eat the person next to you, or, you know, tear the top row of your teeth out or whatever that might be. And so, like, thinking about that, and now everything I've just said, now consider the fact that, like, when I'm reading about that stuff, the only true way that I can describe to convey to you how I feel when I'm reading about that is cozy. I feel cozy. I love that. I love it so much. And I don't know if this will appeal to anyone. I don't expect to convert anybody, but I thought maybe some other people might be interested in this. I put together some reasons of why you, the viewer, but really why I love the Grimdark. Yeah, let's just say why I love it. These are certainly not all the reasons, and a lot of it is ineffable, but I tried my best here, and let me know in the comments if any of this resonates with you. Before I begin, I just want to say the reason why I had a renewed interest in this is because recently I did get into a new setting as well that I have been thinking about morning, noon, and night, and that is Symbaroum. Symbaroum. I'll be able to show you through it a little bit more. Here's a little bit, like, it's a free league. The art in it is, you know, I think one of the lead illustrators, I'm not sure if that's the exact position, but is Johan Noor from of Borg and Into the Odd. And, you know, honestly, the art in this book is, I know it's totally different than this sort of like in-your-face death metal art in something like Borg, but it is so beautiful and so evocative of that grimdark feeling. And I can't wait. I have Free League was able to very generously send me some materials, and also I'm going to be getting a hardcover of the core rulebook that's coming to me in a few days, and so we could take a look through that. I've seen a few people try to solo it. I think I might be able to with like a system of my own making, but this is definitely a grimdark setting. It is characterized by, you know, that you are not going to play a group of adventurers. You are playing people who are looking for treasure. They're dealing with old factional rivalries. There's an entire forest that's covered by something called the Iron Pact, which is a centuries-old agreement between humans and elves that if any humans go into the forest, they can be killed immediately by elves, which also people don't know if that's true. There's tons of stuff in this setting which we actually don't know if it's real, and I love that because it's the same thing with Warhammer where everything's just kind of a rumor, everything is just sort of a one possibility, a report, and I think that makes for great role-playing because you get to fill out that stuff very naturally, very easily. I think it makes it easier than entering into other properties that are more like sort of over decided or over determined, because then you can kind of like start to run afoul of the content, and it looks like Symbaroum is not going to have that problem. And I want to say so much more about this, just about like Virta and order and reaction and power, the energy that rules, and the mythos behind it. But I'll save that for now, because I just kind of want to get to the content here. What's my time? 20 minutes, an all-time record for me. Good job, good job. I'm going to hope my intro. Okay. Why I love the Grimdark. So this is my best effort, all right? Number one, I like exploration over escapism. I know a lot of people say that I play tabletop role-playing to escape, and that's true. I do escape from some things. In fact, the next card will mention one thing that I escaped from through it. I think everybody needs to escape a little bit. And I think it's a healthy escape, right? It's one that if somebody needs you to be there for them, you can quickly just close a book and be there for them, which is much better than like escaping to Las Vegas to go on a bender for 6 weeks. But what I enjoy role-playing for is more about exploring my internal terrain. I don't necessarily want to escape. I want to learn more about myself. And, you know, the way to learn about oneself, you could try to just kind of sit there. And in fact, I suppose like the opposite of that would be a meditation where you just kind of empty yourself out and then just see what's there without judgment. But another common way is just putting yourself in different scenarios and seeing what happens, you know, testing your mettle. And a Grimdark environment is very good for imagining that, right? A Grimdark environment is going to create the sort of biome in which I can imagine how I would react to things, what that must feel like. I sometimes have a weird survivor's guilt, even though there was never, you know, an actual place filled with like orcs and the Iron Pact and elves killing people on sight. But I will sometimes think about like being born in the time that I was born with like antibiotics and dentistry, and the fact that we don't like have wars anymore where we plunge swords into one another regularly. And some people might say that what we have now is, you know, more dehumanizing and worse. But, you know, I guess if you were to say, would you rather, you know, if you had to choose a way to die, would you like an axe, like to split your head in half? I'd be like, no, I don't think that would be very pleasant, especially if then the field medic came and their like solution was to rub some of their spit into your cracked skull. And so I play especially solo games to tend my internal garden, to find out more about who I am. And I feel a Grimdark is very good at that. However, there is occasionally escape. And actually, I knew I was going to put these out of order. So let me find this next one because it does have the word escape in it. And I thought that'd be good if I said, oh, well, you know, I like to explore, not escape, except, of course, in this situation. Okay. I like to escape from the avalanche of uselessness. One of the things about 40K art, and it's this very high Gothic art, you know, like spaceships that basically look like massive cathedrals with like monk type people in shrouded robes over their head, you know, doing like ablutions and incensing some sort of cogitator machine that's, you know, chugging along with this complicated Rube Goldberg set of contraptions on top, and they're doing some sort of, you know, future neo-Gregorian chant. But you know, that's a lot of stuff going on. But you know what's not going on? Pepsi ads. There is no Pepsi ads that I have encountered yet. There is no thing that comes up at the bottom of the screen while I'm reading that says, you know, 6:30 every weeknight is Everybody Loves Raymond. There is no alert coming from Discord. There is no alarm going off on a phone that says not to forget because you have a dental appointment at in the morning. There is only war. And I cannot tell you how convicted I am how convicted I feel to this thought at times of like that, given how gruesome and brutal something like Symbaroum or Warhammer is, I'm like, yes, but also I don't have to watch like an ad for a Kia Sorento there. And that is what I call the avalanche of uselessness. This stuff that when it is stripped away, you know, if we were to like warp a lot of that stuff out, I think we would be amazed at how little we miss, and then in a short amount of time, even remember a lot of the avalanche of uselessness. Grimdark, the avalanche has passed in Grimdark. That is not, nobody gives a shit about that in the far future. As a sort of consequence or outcome of that is the stakes are very clear. The stakes in today's world are very unclear. Everything is sort of virtual, secondhand. There's, our intuition and instincts are often reversed. We're taught at, institutional employment to distrust our instincts and to defy our natural responses and to suppress them. And if somebody is hostile towards us and we work in a customer service job, we're supposed to smile and thank them for their feedback, which is not, everybody knows that's not how that person feels, right? And for more info on that, look up the landmark research on emotional labor and flight attendants. In Grimdark, if a person is on a horse and they're going to revenge their best friend, who was ambushed by a group of elves enforcing the Iron Pact that you believe didn't even really exist and is just a manipulation of the elves to maintain power over the humans because of their disdain. You are thinking of one thing: where you're gonna deposit your sword. You're not worried about where you're going to deposit a check, or if a bank closes at 5, or if you remember a PIN number, or if you are still actually getting 1.9% APR financing, or if that promotional rate ended already. You're thinking about which way you want to swing your sword so that you can take off the most mass of that elf's body in one hit. And why do I suddenly feel like this video is going to be demonetized? The stakes are abundantly clear. To kind of build on the exploration thing, I think those that are attracted to Grimdark settings have a yearning for meaning that emanates from within us. I think a very strong hypnosis that the Western culture does is it convinces you, and like everyone's in on it. I'm in on it. Like even having this channel, I'm in on it in a certain way. Like, there's certain levels of how much somebody is conspiring. But there is the propaganda is that your meaning is somewhere out there. You've got to go find it. It's in a book. It's up a mountain. It's in a job. It's finding the right match on a dating site or on monster.com or on, just the right package that has all the right cable channels that you like and none of the ones that you don't want. There is this, of course, this is to sort of enforce, I would say, but at the very least, encourage consumerism, right? There is this meaning out there. You lack something. You need to go find that thing that will give you meaning. And it is so ubiquitous that even if you're somebody who's trying to find internal meaning, there is so many hazards that derail you. For instance, if you're like, I want to go take a mindfulness meditation class, which is something that is undoubtedly an inner exploration. And maybe you go tell somebody about that and they say, oh, make sure you have the right, blocks to sit on and balance yourself, or else you're going to get very comfortable. And then somebody's like, what kind of pants are you wearing? Do you have like stretchy pants? The site that you signed up at, they're not so good. You should get a package at this other place. They have this really good teacher there, and so they do like an introductory course. And then also you should read 10 books on it. And this podcast is amazing. And you know what? Actually, there's this app, Headspace, that can give you little reminders throughout the day to go ahead and meditate. How useless all that is, when in reality, meditation is the act of sitting in a non-judgmental presence of yourself. That's it. You're not doing anything. You're not earning anything. You're not becoming anything. That's the point. And it is so difficult to do that I have this image in my head right now of like my player character on a horse, and it's going through a forest, and everything is gray. You know, it looks like, see if we can maybe see one of the pictures here. Might come up like that. Not even this one. It's, you know, you're alone, but there's something glowing. And not glowing of like, oh my gosh, your cheeks are glowing. I'm saying like that person has a purpose. They have a meaning. They have a vitality that does not need to be approved by anyone. It does not need to be acknowledged. It does not need to be enhanced. It does not need anyone to even know about it, because that person carries that meaning in them. And that is enough. And in reality, I think we all know that that's the game, is to figure out how we can fill ourselves with enough so that we begin to emanate that. And that is how we truly give to other people and engage with other people. And in Grimdark, the reason why it's easier to imagine that is because everything else is dimmed. I mean, look at this picture. Everything is dimmed. And I think sometimes you need to dim everything to see how much you shine. And I know that sounds like a wine mom towel, but I really do think that's what Grimdark does. Is this world right now is too bright. It's too loud. It's too everything. It's hard to see what you are. And I crave just a quiet that I can start to observe who has that which, you know, emanates from within. And I have it creates a yearning for that. And I do believe that yearning that it creates is healing to me, and it's actually good for me from like a moral standpoint to think about that. I'll let it cycle another. Another reason is I have an intense admiration for people who persist despite suffering, and especially those characters. And I know this might be like some offshoot of a Byronic hero or something, but honestly, one of the best examples of it is Javier Bardem's character in the movie Beautiful, which a lot of people didn't see. It came out shortly after No Country. He's just dealing with so much with his job and his kids and his ex-wife and his brother and this side thing he has. And it's so heavy. You can see it. It's just weighing down. And he just keeps going. And you could just see that fatigue, that deep spiritual fatigue. And for me, when I'm playing in a Grimdark setting, and these are often settings that there is no hope. Things are not looking up. Nobody has a plan. At best, it's like, you know, at a point of equilibrium. But even in that, there is people who still do their duty and move forward, because that's what needs to be done. And I hope that we never get to the point on planet Earth where there is like no hope. There are certainly epochs in our own lives when there is no reason that we can discern to keep going, and yet we do. And the fact that I admire that, I trust myself enough to believe that the fact that I admire that means that there is something really powerful and good that comes from people who continue to move forward despite that. And again, there's nothing like a grimdark fantasy or sci-fi setting to really reinforce that you are totally screwed and that things are not getting any better. Can you keep moving forward? When that happens to you, can you keep moving forward? That's what I ask myself as I play. The next is that a confrontation with chaos yields catharsis. Oof, that's actually a nice little alliteration. So in Warhammer, there's literally chaos. That's like the hell that when you go travel through the warp. But I mean it in the broader sense, is that one of the things I find interesting about every Grimdark setting is that, you know, a lot of the peasants, they know like nothing. And then some of the warrior class or aristocrats, they know as much as they need to. And then the rulers know too much. And some of them exploit, and some of them are completely suffocated by the overwhelming nature of the weight of what they know. But they don't know everything. In this setting, there's only one person that knows everything that's going on. Me. I know everything that's happening to every faction. I mean, obviously allowing for, like, if I'm playing a game, the GM knows more than me and stuff I haven't read, etc. But hypothetically, I am the one who knows everything. And that yields a lot of positive emotions in me. First of all, it yields a lot of empathy, because I think about how when we see a person who's struggling, or a person who cannot keep in lockstep with everybody else or the expectation of them, and it's so easy to look at that person and feel judgmental towards them, and even feel angry or annoyed or hateful towards them. But if you zoom out and you look at that person's, where they came from and what they experienced that morning, or the morning of their 3rd birthday, or the morning of their grandfather's 3rd birthday, when you're able to see those things, you realize that we are consumed on all sides at all times by chaos. We just can't see it. It has the illusion of orderliness. That's what we enforce through our consciousness on reality. We enforce an orderliness, but it's chaos. And the fact that we are able to do as well as we are able to do, despite the fact that everything is in total flux around us, and that there could be right now, you know, a boomerang coming right towards your head. And despite that, nobody can see those things except me. And so I'm able to be easier on myself, because I say, hey, you know, it's not too hard to make the leap here to believe that so many stories show me this chaos swirling everywhere. There's got to be something to that in a corollary in the real world, in our world, to say, I'm probably in that situation too. And so when I miss the mark, or somebody else disappoints me, or things don't go as I expect, you know what? It is cathartic for me to say, yeah, maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture. And hell, the hardest person to do that for is me. That's what's really cathartic about it. Like the other piece generates empathy, but the catharsis is when I'm able to actually look at myself and say, you're doing the best you can. It's hard, man. You're doing the best you can. And would you believe me if I said that I feel that catharsis just by playing those games? If you are able to believe me, then I bet you've played some of these games or read some of these settings, or you know what I'm talking about in some way. And if you don't, you don't. And that's okay. And probably what that sounded like was like a real overreach, a real word sell at work here. And that's fine, because you're in the chaos too, man. We're all swirling in it. One is that you wish to give a character the respect they deserve. This is something that I feel so often is quiet heroism, quiet courage, quiet duty. This, again, in our current culture, we have gotten to a place in which I have no other word to describe it than embarrassing, is that when a person would go out of their way to bring attention to themselves, we felt that naturally elicits a cringe response. Okay. And now I think when we're talking about self-esteem and self-discipline and when we're mean to ourselves, I think that it's okay to recognize when we do a good job, especially if like we're not being appreciated at work or something like that. But I have a harder time believing, as I'm suddenly expected to believe, that the person who is like able to say the most about how much they deserve respect is going to get my respect, because that's not how respect works. It's one of those funny things, right? It's kind of like trying to, when you're a teenager trying to get someone to like you, you can't just like sprinkle 1,000 like points on that person and eventually they'll be like, okay, you're right, you've shown me enough. There has to be chemistry. There's a push and a pull. There's something that grows in an absence and something that diminishes in a presence. And I think what I really wish for, especially when I see somebody who is garnering all sorts of attention and respect and accolades and they don't deserve it, I like to look around the room and be like, who here is just like superior in every way to this person? Which person here is this like single mother who's on the brink of tears right now because of what happened this morning and still came in and did a banger of a job at every responsibility at work, and they missed one thing and their asshole boss, that's the only thing they noticed, and instead of getting an award like some asshole who's up on the stage like thanking everybody and being like, oh yes, of course, as you all know, I had the road that I traveled on to get here was so difficult. And this woman is sitting there and nobody cares. I like looking at her and just like caring. I like thinking about that, of just like, I don't know if that's true. I mean, I'm not saying that like, that almost sounded like I was doing the thing I was saying. I'm not saying like, look how good I am. I don't know if that's that woman's story. But I just imagine that there are stories all around the room. And what I love about a Grimdark setting is that very often, again, we're the only one that knows what our character has done, the sacrifices, the courage, the amount of things that they absorbed so that other people didn't have to be hurt. And I like the fact that that happens to them because it creates a compelling character. And if anyone did know about it, it would cheapen it a little bit. And doesn't work exactly the same way in real life. But what I'm saying is like, I like that I'm the fly on the wall that's able to see this hero. And at the end of the game, they might die face down in mud. Or if the game's really good, they might die within the third day of the campaign. They die face down in the mud. And people run horses and carriages over them, right? And we look at that and we say, that is the way of nature. But then I go, but you know what? At least I noticed that. At least I knew that person's story. At least I'm able to give that character the respect that they deserve and the care. Again, Grimdark, nothing's fair. And that to me is actually a feature and not a bug. Like the universe that's occupied is not fair. It does not reward people correctly. It does not punish the people who should be punished. And because of that, it creates a lot of people who are misunderstood and misjudged and under-respected and undervalued. And you know who else is that way? Everyone. Everyone. Our world is just not as good at recognizing and admitting to this as a Grimdark setting is, or at least you just don't have the opportunity to see it like I do as I'm reading Warhammer or anything else that has this kind of setting where, yeah, it is the shit. It's wall-to-wall shit. Can't believe it. The person who tries the hardest, makes the best decisions, ends up face down in the mud, and the grimy creep who took the easy way out every time is living in luxury. I'm thinking right now of like, if you've ever seen Battlestar Galactica, the 2004 one, Gaius Baltar, right? That's just a scummy guy who just keeps on winning. I like that I can respect that character. That makes me feel a stronger kinship to them when I'm playing a Grimdark setting. You wish to know pain and you wish to concede to death. I know that this is very extreme. I'm actually pulling part of this from David Lynch. David Lynch, I saw a video one time where he was kind of doing a Q&A with film students, college students. And one of them said, and this is like sort of a trope, I guess, but this was like 1989 or something. And the student was like, I have a hard time being both a filmmaker and a husband, or a filmmaker and a good friend, because I feel like to really produce the best art that I can, I need to go very deep into my pain, and I need to be in pain to understand, the texture of this place in the bottom of this well of human emotion. And David Lynch's response was, no, you do not need to be in pain to be an artist. You need to know pain to be an artist, but you do not need to be in pain. And this functions in a couple of amazing ways, is that this not only helps to encourages one to pull themselves out of a miserable situation that they, at least in the part that they control, and it also allows them to value the difficulties that they had and say, look at what those difficulties did for me. And if you take a Grimdark setting where again, the sort of darkness and desperation and trauma is going to be turned to 11, this person, your character, is literally going to be forged by this pain, often physical, but spiritual, emotional, mental pain. And you actually have a progression system to see this. And it is just an amazing model to me of the way that pain always hurts, but pain often also levels you up. And when we are playing truthfully and we're role-playing not to win, but to create a true thing, when we're trying to create something fun, something beautiful, something exciting, we know that sometimes you have to lose to win. Sorry, I bumped into the mic again. And sometimes your character that you're very attached to has to die. And that's really hard. Like, I'm not even overplaying that. I know that is like a little bit cringe, like the way that could be overplayed on like internet playthroughs. There could be some real overreactions. But are you going to be the tough guy that doesn't admit that you don't invest yourself in a character, in a campaign that you really care about, a character that you really have done a good job with, that you really like, one that you finally think, gosh, I finally have the right class on this character, I have my stats just right, the voice I'm doing doesn't hurt my throat, so I don't hurt my throat every week. And I love this. I'm thinking about this character. I'm thinking about what kind of like outfit I want to wear and what kind of armor I want to put on and where I should go on the skill tree. And then boom, Vulcan carbine to the back of the neck. Yep, that's going to happen. And hopefully it's not a Vulcan carbine, but here's something we all know, but none of us believe. We're going to die too. And I believe that role-playing games are a way that I am able to increase my comfort with that and to stare that in the face. I am not in any way saying it's the solution. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, RPGs helped me to come to terms with my mortality. It's a drop. It's a spice in the big recipe of this mortality pie. But I do find value in that because there is a certain denial of that in a game when it's a character who's not even us, shows us something about ourselves. And if you're more interested in exploration than escape, then that's meaningful to you. It's meaningful to see how you react to that because it might have something to do with how you view death. Right? It might have, it could not, but I think I like to notice myself in those moments and say, how am I reacting right now? Because I'm reacting very instinctually, right? Like, so It's like, okay, well, as long as they don't roll, you know, a D20, like a 20 here, like a crit success, and just like have this huge shot. And what do you know? The 20 comes up and you're like, no, no, hell no, no. And think about what goes through your head. You know what goes through my head a lot? I start to think about ways that I can manipulate and coerce. And never, like, not like I'm going to harass or like intimidate and be like, turn that dice. I'm not going to do that. But I do, like, I'll briefly, less and less as I get older, but I'll briefly have this thought of like maybe emotionally manipulating, being like, can we just pretend it was a 19? Oh, I love this character. Or sometimes I want to be like, oh, well, let me think about something here with my equipment. Maybe I can say that I had a modifier. So I think about like cheating or manipulating. And I wonder, does that have something to tell me about how I view my own mortality? I don't know. It's a good question, though. And it just tends to happen a lot more often and a lot more brutally and a lot more very uncinematically in the Grimdark universe, which I think is nice, because sometimes if we have a very cinematic death, we're allowed to, we use that to suppress or to sort of sublimate this latent fear that we have. And we say, oh, well, yes, of course I died, but I'm a high scorer. I'm a top performer. I'm an angel who's floating in heaven and always looking down at you. And maybe some of those things will be true if we live in a reality that has an afterlife, or if we're in a simulation. Either of those things could be real. I believe that there is something beyond this, and I would say that the more that I have faith in something greater and something beyond this, the less I actually want to manipulate or coerce when I have a character that dies. Isn't that interesting? I don't confront that in a game called like Goose on the Loose, where instead of dying, if you get 2 pinches, then you get an owie, and an owie means that your goose can't waddle for the next 10 hatching cycles. If that's your thing, that's fine. Don't at me. Okay, this one was hard for me to get out, but I think I did a good job summarizing it. I play Grimdark because I recognize that there are emotional prizes out there beyond joy, pleasure, and fun. I think we overvalue these things such that we sometimes forget that these are just some human emotions, human experience states. One of the reasons I like roller coasters, and I don't think a lot of people realize that they feel the same way. Maybe they don't say it like this. It simulates something that could cause death. That's why I like roller coasters. It feels like I'm falling. But I'm not. I'm safe. That's what's fun about it. And that's what's fun about a role-playing game. I don't actually want to have a sword fight. I don't actually want to swing a warhammer into somebody's head. But I like thinking about it and thinking about what kind of strength it would take to do that and how you'd feel about that. Even, I think about that when I watch movies that just have these, like, even in Star Wars, what the actual Star Wars, they're just running down a hallway and they would just zap, one of these stormtroopers. And I'm like, dude, that guy like had a kid. What the hell? And it just gets glossed over in a lot of other more sanitary settings. But Grimdark accentuates the exquisite fun and joy and pleasure, but also meaningfulness, satisfaction, fulfillment of simulating loss, simulating fear, simulating apprehension. This is a fun house. This is and it's fun. Obviously I'm not sitting here saying like pleasure and fun and joy aren't good. That would probably be me versus everyone else in the world in that debate. But those are not the only things I want to feel. You think about a comedy show, even like a stand-up comic. What I noticed one time, I was sitting there listening to a stand-up comic. They weren't very good, but they had some good, their form was good, or their technique. And what I noticed is, like, every time you get a joke is a release, but in order to get that release, they kind of squeeze you a bit. Part of the laugh is relief because you felt squeezed a little bit, right? There's a situation that's ambiguous or scary or strange or awkward, and then your lizard brain is like, oh no, danger, danger, danger. And then they say, but then this completely unexpected thing happened. And it's like, oh, thank God. And that release then is more meaningful because it was preceded by a pressure, a discomfort. This question is a question I ask all the time in Grimdark settings. Do I have what it would take to survive here? You know, I often think about, like, and yes, I know that in 100 years, they're going to be like, can you believe that people in 2024 still had to, when they went to the hospital for blood draws, they got stabbed by a needle and they didn't just like phase the red blood cells through their skin. I understand that things are going to get better and easier, and that things now are going to be barbaric in 100, 200 years, the way we look at it. Even so, we got to be honest here. I'm glad that when I have a toothache, I don't die. I'm glad that, like, if I fall on a rock and break my arm, the only solution, if it gets infected, is not to hold me down and chop it off with an axe. And I think about this a lot. I think about this. And again, if you take this very literally, which I think critics of what I'm saying, or people who are distrustful of what I'm saying right now, would say, oh, so you think like that's a good skill that you want to like get tough so that you can get your arm axed off? That's like toxic masculinity. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are the equivalent of that now. There are things when you got to let things go that are going to hurt. There are times when when you're not in control anymore. And are you able to bite down, to swig the whiskey and bite down? Not if you have any problems with whiskey. Please don't swig whiskey. But are you able to swig this very strong 7-Up down and say, do it, cut it, take it out? Are you able to do that? Those are emotions that are like brought to you by, sponsored by, presented by Grimdark settings. And I love it. I love it. I think we might almost be done here. Yes, we are. If anyone else, if any of this resonated, if you think I overreached, if you think that I'm not seeing the whole picture, that's fine. If I missed anything, let me know in the comments below. If anyone else likes these kind of settings, I'm curious if anyone has played Symbaroum or if they've played any other games that are Grimdark. And I would like to say that I think there's going to be some different definitions of Grimdark. You know, I think some people would say that like Mork Borg is Grimdark. I think Mork Borg is quite joyous. It's quite ecstatic about the hellish sort of environment that it presents. It's definitely nihilistic. But for me, Grimdark is somber, drizzling, overcast, and everybody is squinting because of just the pain of looking forward. But yeah, I guess that's too, like, what's your definition of Grimdark? Has this ever even occurred to you? I don't know if anyone's going to enjoy this video. I hope that you got something out of it, and I would love to hear your feedback. And thanks for coming. I'll see you all in the grim darkness of the far future, like next Thursday.